Good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Tuesday, October 12th, 2021. And our top story today, caregiving shortage worsens throughout the country as population ages. Well, joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Ray Mcgrath. Ray, so great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Oh, glad to finally be on the show, Jeff. I watch it daily.
We appreciate that, Ray. Ray, we've got a really serious topic to talk about this morning, and that is caregiving and finding caregiving. And I know you have a loved one who is in need of significant care. What have been some of the challenges? And did you have a lot of? Let me start off with: did you have a lot of difficulty finding somebody to take care of this individual?
I did, and Jeff, I reached out to a variety of networks. With my mom, she was coming out of rehab, and the rehab folks and social workers gave me a lot of contacts to start with. I worked inside my family. I worked through church groups. I think what worked best for me eventually, and I don't want to cut to the chase too much, but I was able to reach out to my peers who have kind of gone through this with their parents and some of the avenues they explored in order to get help. And that was very beneficial for me because they hooked me up into a network of other caregivers. But, I was using different websites, care.com. I was reaching out to neighborhood sources. I was reaching out to organizations. But, a lot of the formal organizations that I reached out to were pretty much Monday to Friday type care. And they didn't have a lot of service for Saturday and Sunday, which, most people want those days off. So that was a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. You were looking for, you mentioned it's your mother. She was coming out of some hospitalization, and you were doing some of this. So you have a brother, you have family, but you were really handling this. And I have to imagine, on top of managing your own family and managing your day-to-day job, because you are working, this is, I would think, pretty stressful for someone like yourself to provide care.
It was. So I ended up spending a few weeks living with my mom. She wanted to live back in her own place. I tried to get her to my place. She didn't want to stay there. She's very independent. And so I ended up living with her for a few weeks and just trying to provide any type of care I could in between the visiting nurses that would come by, an hour or so a day. So for me, I related a lot to when my children were born, and my wife and I, at least for the first one, weren't sure what we should do or how. We wanted to be helpful with our children, but we weren't sure what to do. With my mom, she's very alert, so she told us exactly what she needed done. So it helped set up the routine, and I was able to get comfortable with it. But I think I was at my not wit's end, but I was on edge a lot because I wasn't sure what was the right steps to take or how to take care of her at the same time, trying to balance my job. And fortunately, and this maybe I'm going on a little bit of a tangent, but fortunately, due to the pandemic, I'm able to work via Zoom a lot do a lot of my meetings. So that enabled me to be there with my mother, and then at the same time be on camera and work as well. So it was fortunate. I was fortunate.
Yeah, absolutely fortunate, and that your employer provides that level of flexibility. You don't have to go into an office. That's really important. Let's talk about the interview process to find caregivers. I know that was a little bit of a stumbling block. As you mentioned, people they want to earn a wage, and we know that nationally there is a challenge finding caregivers, and a lot of times people like you and I have to step in to take care of a loved one. So what were some of the pushback, if that's even the right word, or in terms of finding someone who could step in? Was it the cost? Was it the time? Take us through that.
It was a little bit of both. Initially, if I said ideally I wanted someone who could live with my mom and just help her with her day-to-day stuff. And she really can't walk at all for the most part. So I needed someone that would be willing to be a 24/7 living. And that was probably the biggest stumbling block. I found a fair amount of people who could give me daytime hours during the week. And I think that would have worked if my mom lived with me, because then I could be there in the evenings and the weekends. So for me, and event, it might even come down to that eventually, where she moves in with me, and then I can just get by with, someone who gives me 8 hours during the day. But that was, was probably the amount of time and the commitment, and even for me, living with my mom for 2 weeks and being a 24/7 caregiver, it's tough. And I mean, it's not physically tough, but I think, just being on the job for that straight amount of period, it's very stressful. So I welcome it. I welcomed any type of relief where I could get out and go get something to eat or go for a walk in the park. So then it comes down to also a cost as well. So I could provide, at the time I'm here in New Jersey, 24-hour daycare in a facility is over $12,000 a month. So, and that's not covered by insurance. So that would be on me or my brother, so that's kind of expensive. So we were looking for something, less expensive than that, but also to be able to give my mom some type of her independence and be back in her own environment. So that was kind of, we were trying to balance it out. And there was no great answer, but that's what we had to deal with.
Yeah, and your story is probably not unlike so many stories out there. Let me ask you this: you said your mom's very alert, she's aware, she's with it mentally. How is she adapting to having this new person come in? It's like any type of relationship, right? It's a working relationship. You have to get along. So does she like the caregiver? Are they bonding? How's that working out?
So that was one of my biggest concerns, and because everyone's unique, and my mom. So I gave him 3 days or a couple of days. In the beginning, I was there every other day. And now I gave him 3 days in a row. So it's only been a week. So I'm only a week into this so far. So I got my fingers crossed. But they seem to be getting along. And now my mom is saying, well, there's too many visiting nurses now coming. Because I really have one. I guess for her, this is personal. But she feels that there's too many people coming to check in on her and take care of her. And she'd rather just be more independent. But I think, that's up to the doctors and the nurses. They feel they need to check her and, make sure she's recovering properly. So, she's, everyone's unique. But I feel as if so far so good. Now I have my fingers crossed. So.
Well, it sounds like things are going in the right direction. Ray, I need to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk to Ray more about some of the tips that he used to find caregiving for his mother. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you over 50? Would you like to get up to 33% more income in retirement? Then call now for this free book, Annuity Do's and Don'ts for Baby Boomers. This free book reveals little-known secrets about annuity strategies that will help you make the right choices before buying an annuity. Call right now for your free book, and as a bonus, we'll also throw in a free annuity rate report, both absolutely free for calling Annuity General today.
Call 800-504-8194.
Welcome back. We're talking to Ray Mcgrath this morning about caregiving. Ray, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Thank you, Jeff.
We've been very fortunate to hear your story. I think a lot of the audience, I would say, probably relieved, bolstered by your experience and how successful you have been, although it's only been about a week and a half with support for your mom. Let's talk about some tips and tricks that you used. First, let's talk about the network. And originally, I think when we chatted, you were trying to go kind of to different websites and find people, and you just weren't having any luck. But let's talk about your connectivity with church groups and your community and how you went about doing that.
Yeah, so eventually what worked for me, and like I said earlier, I was looking for 24/7. I reached out to my peers, other individuals my age who have older parents who have gone through this already. Sometimes their parents go quickly and it's not an issue, but if they need continuing care in the later stages of life, they've reached out to different people. So they had a network of individuals in the community that kind of provide this service, or because really what I was looking, I know it's hard to, it sounds rough to say, but you don't want a stranger, but I mean, all these people are basically strangers to you. So you really need to try and vet them and do a background check. And I think what made me comfortable was that the folks that came to be interviewed, or that my mom and I interviewed, my mom's very alert, as I said, the folks that we interviewed were all recommended by either the local church or some of my friends who had used them for their parents. So they all had good backgrounds with strong recommendations. And it takes a unique individual, to dedicate their time to, helping an elderly person just get through their day and make them as comfortable as possible. So, I mean, for me, I started out, as you said, with websites. Someone told me Nextdoor and then care.com. And then I was on a whole, social workers at the rehab center gave me a list of different agencies, but it really came down to what fit best for my mom's lifestyle. And that was 24/7 care, even though probably 20 hours of the day, you don't have to do anything for her, but it's those 4 hours where, someone needs to help her answer the door or whatever, or, bring her lunch, so but it did, to go back to your original question, it did come back to my own network and just networking. I reached out to great folks like yourself, like to others, some of my friends and neighbors, and they were all very supportive, and they kind of gave me advice. And I ended up, at the end of the day, I probably could have, so in the beginning, it took a few weeks to try and find people, but then at the end, I had multiple candidates to choose from. And unfortunately, during this pandemic, there's a lot of folks that aren't either back in the workforce or just not willing to do this kind of work at this time. So, it worked out. And language was a barrier. I tell you, I ran into that. There were individuals who, weren't fluent in English, but, for my mom, she's only an English speaker. So that was a bit of a challenge. So I ended up, basically, I found someone who had good language skills, and because that's important, because they need to be able to communicate with me and with my mom, and then, so we can all work together as a team.
Yeah, really important. Let's talk a little bit more about that interview process. I mean, did you have a resume? I mean, and seriously, I mean, is it you invite this person in? Did you Zoom with this person or Skype with this person? How did you? I think the audience would be interested. How did you were handed a list of names by your church and community and friends, and then how did you go through this? And then what was the process to decide? Did your mom, was she more heavily weighted than you? How did that work out?
Yeah, I mean, my mom, I think she wanted someone who, she wanted a woman, so that was part of the reason she didn't like me as a caregiver, but she wanted a woman. And she was, I think, easygoing, but she wanted someone who was from the community. And this is just her. She wanted someone who she could talk to and have a conversation with. And I think so for her, it was more of a personality thing and a language thing. I was looking for just lists of references. I had some, I met with other families who had used some of these individuals who gave them strong recommendations. Even though their loved ones passed away, they still had these people involved in holiday celebrations. So they had become part of the family. And I think those were all very strong references to get such good feedback on a lot of these people. I had one individual who was, maybe not, she was from out of state, and she was recommended by an agency. For some of them, I just had to, I actually Googled some of them. I mean, it was interesting, but really what it came down to was other friends of mine or friends of friends, and speaking to them and how everything worked out for them and this individual and the care they received. I think that was a deciding factor for me. It was pretty much some word of mouth. There's when I go away from a 9 to 5 individual and I look for someone who can live in, you have to go through more informal networks. So that was kind of a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I would liken it to finding a physician or a dentist or some other professional. You got to have the rapport. Last question here, Ray, for the show. Take us through the fee. Is the rate that you pay, is that negotiable? Is that set by, how is that set? I mean, do you enter into, like you settle on this person or persons, and do you say, okay, what's the rate, or do you know all that going in, or do you negotiate some of that? I think the audience would be interested to know that.
Yeah, I had no idea what the rate should be. So, and basically it works out to probably half of what the nursing home was charging. Although, I guess it's to be determined. No, I know what the fee is. I know what I'm paying, but then I pay for other costs like meals and things like that for the caregiver and what have you. And I also pay for the caregiver I pay for them. So the deal I worked out, and this is because I only heard it from others, so I'm not sure if there's a formal network of this, but they told me every 30 days or every 28 days, day 29 and 30 is a day off with pay. And if they needed me to get a caregiver for day 29 and 30, there was another network of those individuals that you have to pay double time to. But I think on those days, I'll go back and I'll stay with my mom. I live about an hour away. So,
okay.
Yeah, I think I have no idea what the rates are. I heard people tell me, 12 years ago, I was paying someone and they gave me a number of $800 a week. I'm like, wow, that sounds very inexpensive, but those are different times. And I think with unemployment and inflation, I mean, so hopefully I'm more with the times, but I reached out to a couple of different agencies that kind of work to help families in situations like mine, and they both quoted me similar rates of what I'm paying now.
Very interesting. Well, I thank you so much, and on behalf of the audience, thank you for sharing this. It's obviously not easy. Your parents did it for you. Now you're helping your mom out. It's not an easy part of life for anybody, but it seems like you have overcome some big challenges. Ray Mcgrath, pleasure chatting with you. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Good to be on, Jeff. Talk to you later.
That wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the information in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. We're back again tomorrow. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited, and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a tax doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.